You know, every once in a while you stare at your movie shelves or you come across something in the dark corners of streaming that you know would absolutely confuse most people that you know. Not necessarily bad movies, not forgotten movies, but cult films, rare oddities that most people have never seen. The kind of films that you don't discover through hype and word of mouth, but rather through late night curiosity, old school VHS culture strolling those aisles, and now through boutique labels like Vinegar Syndrome and occasionally those hidden corners of something like Tubi. And it is a wonderful, beautiful mess. You got horror, crime, westerns, crazy comedy, cult chaos, and it is all wrapped up in some crazy packages that make you say, how did this even get made? And also, I'm kind of glad it did. And today I have a bunch of cult films that you've probably never seen. So pop that tape in. I got you. Let's go do this. All right, so kicking off the first one on this list, I just recently picked these up through my Vinegar Syndrome subscription, and I get these films through Vinegar Syndrome and their partner labels. Some of these you can discover and try before you buy, usually on Tubi, and I'll try to put those links down here because this is a crazy, crazy set of movies. Starting off with Dario Argento's Opera. Now, best known probably for Suspiria is Dario Argento. He made a lot of other movies, and this one is late in his career filmography, and it's not the Phantom of the Opera that you're expecting. Instead, it's instead of all that tragedy and romance and Angel of Music and all that stuff, you get rats, violence, erotic obsession, and the Phantom who is raised by rodents. I mean, seriously, he was. Now, I have to admit, I have not seen all these movies, and I have not seen all of them all the way through. So just like you, I'm having to discover them as I go. So we're going to be in this together. The plot loosely follows the original Phantom of the Opera story, but filtered through that late career Argento excess of crazy camera moves, graphic imagery, and almost a total disregard for subtlety. The movie really, like a lot of his late stuff, baffles audiences just a little bit because it's not an elegant horror. It's more primal, gritty, sweaty, and aggressive. And to a lot of people, that's fascinating. If you want to check it out and jump in, Argento dared audiences to keep up all the way through the end or get out. Phantom of the Opera, a recent pickup. Check it out. Now, this next one is one that traumatized people for free. That's right, for free, because it came on television, and that is Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. Now, this one was actually, I believe, remade by Guillermo del Toro, or he wrote the script for it. But originally, this was a made-for-TV story that follows a couple that moves into an old mansion and discovers small whispering creatures living in the walls begging to be fed. What makes this movie work isn't like gore or in-your-face scares, but suggestion. The creatures are barely seen. The sound design does a lot of the heavy lifting in this one. Been a while since I've seen this one, but this is like horror that sneaks into your suburban living rooms under the disguise of harmless TV movie of the week style programming. And because it wasn't released theatrically, it became something people remembered seeing more than they can explain. But it's definitely got some nightmare vibe fuel to it. A brand new 4K through a partnership with Warner Brothers. So we're going to see a lot more films just like this. Now, next up, we have a good old frozen, snowy ghost story. All things that I like. And this one is a Canadian horror film. It is Ghostkeeper. Now, Ghostkeeper is Canadian, all that snowy horror isolation at its finest. You got a group of snowmobilers here who get stranded at a remote lodge, because ain't that just how that happens all the time, during a massive winter storm, and they quickly realize that something is very wrong, and it is there living with them. The plot is simple, but the atmosphere is doing all the work here. The snow, all that stuff. Endless snow, no escape. The environment itself wants you gone, like it's closing in on you. It's the kind of movie that ended up playing on late night cable TV, all that kind of stuff. You've maybe seen parts of it. It's just that type of movie you would have found old school, like Joe Bob Briggs Drive-In, something like that. Ghostkeeper is quiet, it slows down, and it absolutely understands its audience and what they're looking for. This is actually a pretty solid film right here. Just came out on Blu-ray. And if you can find it on Tubi or anywhere else, I'll let you know. All right, so our next one is actually a cheat because it's 3 movies rolled into one, and it is the definition of a deep cut oddity cult film. This is all of it wrapped into one, and it is Hong Kong, Made in Hong Kong, Volume 2. This one is a deep cut triple feature, and no, I'm just going to tell you, there's a film in here called Best of the Best. It's not the famous Best of the Best. These films feel gritty, street-level Hong Kong cinema. There's a lot of that going on out there right now. It's kind of revival. Everybody's putting it out on physical media. You can find it all over streaming. It's just, these films kind of flirt with exploitation cinema, action, raw, realism. You have 3 films in here. New York, Chinatown, Best of the Best, and Final Justice. And again, not the best of the best you're thinking of. You got 3 films back here. New York, Chinatown, and I had to look this up because these are so odd and rare, they missed me too, even as someone who taught and makes films. But New York, Chinatown leans into an immigrant crime drama and urban desperation, kind of all those vibes. Final Justice is supposedly the most brutal of these, very cynical, stripped of all heroics, just down to it, brutal type film. And Best of the Best is maybe the most obscure one with the most recognizable title. And it feels like a movie, and I just popped this one in very briefly, but it feels like a movie that must have barely survived its own production. That's the only thing I can say about it. These movies aren't polished crowd pleasers. They're usually like rough, exploitative, angry, a little uncomfortable, which is exactly why a lot of people, including maybe you, find them interesting. This is the cinema that existed outside of the mainstream pipeline, and we're getting all of this stuff revived today. Made in Hong Kong. 3 films. Now, next up we have, I promised you some Westerns, and how about maybe the bleakest Western ever made, and this one is super popular. It's sold out almost instantly, so I have to link to where you can find it on streaming before you can try before you can hunt it down and buy, and that is The Great Silence. Now, like I said, this thing is bleak. I just started watching this, and there's not a lot of sound or not a lot of dialogue because you have a mute gunslinger as the lead in this, and he's played by Klaus Kinski. And it's another one, it's perfect for this time of year, winter times, because it is set in a frozen, snow-covered landscape. The film follows that mute gunslinger as he's battling corrupt bounty hunters, and this movie absolutely refuses to go with like traditional Western like morality. None of that is here. There's not any clean victories that I saw in this, and I haven't got to the end, but I was reading, you're not looking for a triumphant ending. You're not looking for a happy ride off into the sunset with this. This movie, in fact, was so bleak that distributors demanded alternate endings depending on the country that it came out in. That alone probably tells you everything you need to know and makes it a curiosity to watch. So this is kind of one of those Westerns that does that old school, good, bad, and the ugly, stare down into the void and doesn't blink. It is very, very heavy, But The Great Silence, one to check out, especially if you're into Westerns. Now, next up, we're going to turn the channel just a little bit for a Troma film. And if you don't know who Troma is, it's ran by Lloyd Kaufman. They're the longest running independent studio out there as far as I know. They make very exploitative, over-the-top, ridiculous, satirical horror. You know, they got a lot of over-the-top gore, sex, nudity, craziness. They do everything from comedies to horror with some action thrown in. And here they do something about sort of the movie industry eating itself with terror firmer. And this is Troma at full power. This is one of the few that I had seen all the way through before because of what it's about. I like movies that involve movies and movie making. And Terra Firma is a super grotesque, self-aware, deliberately offensive horror comedy, over the top into exploitation category film about a film production plagued by murder, mayhem, and absolute total chaos. The plot is intentionally absurd, just like most Troma films, because the movie itself is about exploitation cinema eating itself alive, essentially. This is not a movie that you would casually recommend to anyone. If this is your first Troma film, I wouldn't start here. I would start with something maybe a little more slightly mainstream like Toxic Avenger. Something like that. Or maybe The First Turn On, I believe, is also theirs. But if you understand Troma, this is pure, unfiltered, late 90s. So this is a later era film. This has got all that underground energy to it. It's gross, it's loud, it's absurd, surprisingly sharp beneath the filth that is all there on top. Terra Firma, directed by Lloyd Kaufman, comes in on our list. Now, the next one kind of sneaks up on our list just a little bit because this one's going to class up the joint, and it probably has the biggest cast of any film here, for sure, because you've got Matthew Modine starring in this, you've got Michelle Pfeiffer starring in this, and that just scratches the surface of Married to the Mob, which is a recent 4K release from Vinegar Syndrome through their cinematograph line. And this one absolutely belongs here because it's one that kind of gets overlooked and lost. It's a stylish sort of crime comedy, really. So you had like a time when all these crime movies were coming out, very serious crime movies. And then you get this one that kind of takes that life, but through a lens of comedy, and you have a mob wife trying to escape the criminal life here. So the movie blends satire again and fashion, believe it or not, and a lot of sharp social commentary in this one, but is overshadowed by the louder 80s and then 90s serious crime dramas, and people can kind of miss it, which is why it's here. It's clever, it's confident, it's very rewatchable. If you get the physical media release, they have all kinds of new features, including lengthy interviews with Matthew Modine, who's been recently starring in Stranger Things on Netflix. So it's a big get. I will try to let you know all the places that you can find it in the description, and I'll try to pin a comment down there. But this one proves that oddities and rare cult films and stuff you might have missed don't necessarily have to be extreme to fit this category and be memorable. This is just a solid film, Married to the Mob. And that just leaves one film on our list, and it probably really should not exist, and that is Tank Girl. Now, this is a recent 4K Vinegar Syndrome release from their VSU line. That's the Vinegar Syndrome Ultra. This is their Ultimate Elite 4K full restoration. You've got all that kind of stuff going here, but I'll link to wherever you can find this movie in case you want to try before you buy, because this one is just pure chaos. I think this is the type of movie that could only have existed in the 80s or 90s. I don't think there's any other time this movie would have gotten made. It's based on a comic book, and it throws together everything. And I mean everything. You've got like punk rock aesthetic to this thing, post-apocalyptic chaos, ridiculously absurd humor, some comic book energy, crazy colors, pure tonal whiplash back and forth on this thing. And this is a release that kind of failed because audiences just didn't know what in the heck to do with it. Cult audiences eventually did. This, like a lot of other movies on this list, survived and they exist today. They made their money and found their audience through VHS, through late night cable, all that kind of stuff where movies had to be found, discovered, experienced, and passed down. That's how Tank Girl found its audience. The movie isn't trying to be clean, safe, or even coherent, really. It's just trying to be itself. Like a lot of movies on this list, we kind of need to get back to taking chances on movies like this. If we just had something like the VHS rental store again, maybe we can bring that back. I know that sounds crazy in this time period, but it allowed films to find their audiences without getting lost because those cover arts could attract your attention. We need something like that. Tubi may be the closest that we have because they put out movies like this that other people will never put on their streaming. So if I can find these on streaming, I will put them on there so you can try before you buy to introduce yourself to these cult classics that a lot of people have never seen. So there you go. None of these movies are winning Oscars, right? None of them are making a ton of money even. They were made, though, because someone had an idea. End of story. And then nobody stopped them from executing that idea. And there's something so beautiful about that risk-taking, that love of film, of hey, I got this crazy idea and I'm going to make it. And it will find its audiences. We got to give movies that chance again. Thanks to old school VHS rentals and then DVDs and physical media and now boutique labels and renewed late night curiosity with things like Joe Bob Briggs still going on, Tubi putting old stuff up there, things like Shudder. These movies have a chance to live again, and that's where cult cinema thrives. That's where movies find their audience and bring people together, not in perfection, but in personality and creativity. So there you go. Which one of these did you discover late? Did you discover none of these? How many of these have you seen? How many of them have you even heard of? Let me know, and I want to know what's the weirdest 2 or 3 movies that either you have sitting on your shelf right now or that you've come across on Tubi, streaming, Netflix, wherever, and just said, hey, this movie is for me. It may not be great, but it is for me. And there you go. I want to know. So drop it in the comments. Check the links down below. Anything helps support the channel, or it just may direct you to something awesome that you never knew about. And that's what I got for you this time. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And if you want to help a little bit more, you can join my Patreon. The link is always in the description down below. Sometimes I put it in the pinned comments. But over there, you will get a 4K deep dive or Blu-ray deep dive review into the quality and the extras on all movies like this, plus other movies that I get. You'll get special behind-the-scenes looks at my filmmaking, other members-only videos, and tons of extra content that I just can't do here. And $1 or $2 a month at, depending on your tier, and you get it all, and we get to interact over there, and it all supports the channel. And I really do appreciate it. But until next time, be kind, rewind like always. It's Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.
I know.